First of all, Vint, hello, Vint, you are pioneer of the internet and you are vice president at Google. Thank you for being with us this morning on your side, also because it's a special day in the US and you may be quite busy with some of the results. We also have Concetina Casa. Concetina, we know each other since 3 years. You are working for the Agency for Digital Italy at the Office of the Prime Minister in Italy. You are also co-chair of the Best Practice Forum on Data, and you are active as a team for the National Dialogue in Italy of the Citizens Dialogue. Raquel, hello Raquel. We also know each other since a couple of years. You are now active at the Internet Society in Brazil, national partner for Brazil, together with Delibera Brazil, our other partner in the country. We then have Simon. Hello, Simon. You are working at the German government, the Federal Office, Foreign Office, and one of the strongest supporters of that process. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your support. We also have Livia. Livia, hello. You are working in the neighbor country of Germany, so Swiss, and working at the Federal Office of Communication. You are very engaged in internet governance, and your country is a leader in that space. Thank you for being with us and react on the results. We also have Olga. Olga, hello. You are the CEO and founder of the influencer platform based in the Ukraine, and you have been our partner in that country. You are also active at the Regional Internet Governance Forum, and thank you for being with us today. Next will be Erlingo. Erlingo, hello. You are working at Facebook at the Global Policy Team. Have been supporting us since over 2 years. We have been discussing a lot on those topics, on this process. I'm really, really happy to have you here today. And last but not least, Lynn. Hello, Lynn. You are the chair of our advisory board with the internet, and you are also a pioneer in terms of internet governance. You are the former chair of IGF Mag, and you will have the difficult responsibility to say the closing words today of that hour. Thank you very much for being there. The people we don't see necessarily are all our national partners that are also here today with us. So thank you for being there and for all the participants and the people that are here. Why are we here today? We at Mission Publique have a deep conviction, and this conviction is that we want to test, improve, and institutionalize internet governance with and for the citizens. How we imagine that we can do that, we imagine that as a process of deliberation. So we want to engage ordinary citizens and stakeholders into that discussion on the future of internet by giving them some tools. And those tools are, first of all, an occasion, so a moment to come together and to discuss on the future of internet, but also some balanced information to be able to make their opinion, make their mind about this discussion. And we want to have impact on policy. So this is why we want to use that kind of format, that deliberative format. The timeline of the project, as a reminder, we have started to work on it in 2017, have had some preliminary discussion in 2018 and 19, and in 2020, we have been scaling the process in the frame of the COVID outbreak. So it has brought a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges, but we are happy that in October, we were able to deploy the deliberation and citizens deliberation in over 70 countries of the world, although some of them are still in preparation. We know some partners are going to have it at the mid of November. So we think about them. Now we are going to present the first results, preliminary results, and then we are going to consolidate those results. So for 2021, we want to have the final results, publish them widely, and we aim at 2025. This is the long term for us, and the perspective of being in interaction with possibly the next Summit on Information Society in 2025. Some key figures about the full process, so the stakeholders and citizens dialogue. It has involved participants in more than 80 countries, partners in all those countries, and over 5,000 participants. Now I'd like to share with you a feedback in video of how it has been for the people. We have this fresh feedback from the ground. I will share that with you, and we are going to have 5 minutes with the participants from all over the world.
Inspiring.
عطيها اللون.
успешно.
التجربة كانت مميزة ومعلومات مثيرة.
بهترين.
كلاس.
Importante.
Éberség leintő.
Lehrreich.
Разнообразно.
Rất bổ ích.
Hasznos volt.
Muchas gracias.
Merci.
Ça fait 3 ans qu'on y travaille et aujourd'hui c'est le jour où ça se passe dans le monde entier, donc beaucoup de bonheur.
Мне нравится, что пришли участники, которые действительно готовы поделиться своим мнением и услышать мнение оппонентов.
I actually enjoyed it. I really liked how it was conducted.
Vừa đưa cho mình thêm rất là nhiều kiến thức mới.
Nagyon videókat néztünk meg.
شخصيات داخل وصار أصل تهنين وأخذت أكبر كمية من المعلومات.
He experimentado esto de una forma genial.
मुख्तलिफ कारहाई ज़िंदगी और शोबों से ताल्लुक़ रखने वाले लोग यहाँ पर आए, उनसे मैं मिला, उनकी राय जब मैंने जानी.
La verdad me dio un poco de curiosidad aprender más sobre lo que es el mundo del internet.
So it's been a very good experience. We have got a lot to learn, but we have also got a lot of take-homes that we should take out there and change the world for the better.
И я уверен, что это принесет пользу в развитии интернета.
Tôi cảm thấy tự tin hơn về chủ đề Internet. Tôi cũng sẽ mong muốn được lan tỏa các cái kiến thức này đến cho nhiều người.
Ich habe heute beim Bürgerdialog teilgenommen, weil ich mehr darüber erfahren wollte, was mit meinen Daten passiert, wie sie verarbeitet werden und wie ich Einfluss darauf nehmen kann.
I've got to know people's experiences on overuse of internet, indulgence and being socially recluse.
То есть это разные точки зрения, которые помогают нам как-то агрегировать наши знания и в дальнейшем с пользой их применить.
तो डिबेट वो वाइड सोर्स है जहाँ पे अगर हमारे यूथ को स्पेसिफिकली पेशावर की यूथ को अगर कोई क्वेश्चंस है या फिर कोई भी कंफ्यूजन है.
And I'm so glad that we are discussing these issues because they impact everyone.
Este diálogo me ha servido mucho porque he podido implementar nuevas estrategias, ideas que no solamente son de mí, sino de todos.
Nous avons fait plusieurs points de recommandation. La qualité du réseau. Nous avons dénoncé la cherté d'accès à ces réseaux. Este internet no lo usamos a como debería de ser y esto es preocupante para el mundo.
इंटरनेट के फ्यूचर के बारे में मैं काफ़ी कॉन्फिडेंट हूँ क्योंकि ये हमारे लोगों के लिए कन्वीनियंस का बायस बनेगा.
Ezt követnek is mindenhol, és mindent tudnak rólunk.
Nous croyons que demain sera fait d'un lendemain meilleur. L'Internet va être régulé.
Ich sehe die Zukunft des Internets sowohl als Fluch und Segen zugleich.
The internet is not that bad.
I'm both confident and afraid, to be honest.
Хотелось бы чувствовать себя как в безопасном пространстве, и я в это верю.
Ich glaube, dass viel Schaden oder viel Chance damit angerichtet werden kann.
Нужно немножко сменить точку зрения, точнее, обзор, с которого мы смотрим.
Que sean un poco más responsables en el aspecto de la seguridad a las cuentas de las redes sociales que tenemos.
It should be a safe place for every individual to voice out their opinion.
Il faut qu'on essaye de protéger un peu l'humain.
Whether it's psychology, whether it's engineering, whether it's law, we need to be as inclusive as possible so that we can get the best results, the best laws, the best regulations and the right rules in place to protect everyone.
Szeretném, ha nyugodtan az internetnek köszönhetően nyugodtan élhetnénk a mindennapjainkat.
J'aime à ce que l'internet soit accessible vraiment aux chats.
حابين انه يكون يعني بسرعة فائقة وقلة في السعر طبعا.
Это очень важно, и я бы посоветовал регулярно устраивать подобные дебаты для того, чтобы знать мнение пользователей сети.
So these are some impressions from the ground. I hope you have gotten a good idea of what's happening there. Let's dive into the discussion and the results. Before we do so, a disclaimer. These are preliminary results. They are mostly based on a quantitative data. So the qualitative data are still to be evaluated. And I'd like to remind ourselves that these answers are the product of a discussion and an information. So it's not an opinion poll. It's the answer that people give after they have been discussing the topic and after they have gotten some key informations on it. In terms of participants, I'd like to show you more or less the diversity we had and we aimed at. We aimed at having people from all walks of life for the Citizens Dialogue, and we have reached that in terms of diversity of age, diversity in terms of gender, and balance also in terms of gender, but also in terms of the occupation, having people from all sectors of society. We are now going to dive into the first topic. The first topic is the question of data, and this is the first question we asked the citizens, or the first topic we addressed is today we are a society in which we produce data. We produce data as person, but we also produce data as a society. So for us, one key question concerning the future of internet is how should we handle that data that we produce as a society and as individuals. I'm going to present you some results and I'm going to ask reaction from our panelists on those results. But before we do that, I'd like to give you an opportunity also to join the discussion in a way and to have a kind of also answering the question we asked citizens. So you can join us at slido.com, hashtag OF16, or scan the QR code you are seeing on the screen, or in the chat. I think Benoit will put the link in the chat. And you also can ask or answer that question that we asked the citizens. So one of the key questions we asked is, if you think about the advantages and drawbacks of the fact that we as a society collect and use more and more data, we asked them how they see that. I'd like to have your view on that, and we can compare what the citizens participating in the dialogue and you are thinking. It's a way of having an interaction on that topic. So I see that answers are coming. I'm now going to present some of the results. So for the citizens of the world, 50% of them see that it is equally an opportunity and a threat. And 25% of them think that this is more an opportunity than a threat. So globally, a positive or neutral position on data. Also, if we ask them who should control the collection, access, and use of digital data, we have a strong support for a personal responsibility, a responsibility of the people, that people want to have the control and want to make the decision by themselves, including the decision to sell the data. And also a support for the right to access and use the data. Interestingly, we also have quite a lot of people that say that we should stop collecting data in the first place, but it's not the majority of them. If we ask the citizens after the discussion how they feel about data, they are answering for the majority that their understanding of data has improved. This is a clear effect of the discussion and the deliberative process, as I mentioned before. Also, if we ask them how they will behave after the dialogue and the kind of conclusion they draw from it, a huge majority or a majority of them say that they will act differently because they will share less data, that's the majority, but also some of them because they will share more data. And I'm happy to see the reaction of our panelists on that point. As a reminder, the Slido is open, so I see that you start answering, that's very good. I'd like now to give the floor to Vint. Vint, what is your reaction to those results?
So thank you very much, Antoine. First of all, I have to tell you that Antoine's idea to go and ask the world what its opinion is of the internet reminds me a little bit of Sergey Brin and Larry Page when they were still students at Stanford and said, why don't we download the entire World Wide Web and index it? And my first reaction to this is, you must be out of your mind. And so I had a similar reaction when Antoine was saying, let's just ask the world what they think about the internet. And yet this was not crazy. And in fact, it's sort of a simplistic concept. You know, if you wonder what people are thinking, why don't you ask them? And so that's exactly what Antoine and the Mission Publique has done with the We the Internet effort. Antoine asked me specifically to respond on the data side. And so let me start out by observing that transparency is a very critical element here. It's impossible to offer certain services without having some personal information. If you want me to ship an item to you, I have to know where to ship it to. If you need me to call you on the phone or send you a text mail to alert you to the arrival of something, I need to know what your mobile number is. So there are a set of things that are necessary, even though we also think of them as being personal information. But of course, the user should have the knowledge of what information is needed, and they should be able to decide whether they're going to share it or not. So that's the first point, is transparency and decision-making is very important. I think a second issue has to do with what happens to that information. It might be necessary to supply a particular service, but it might also be used by the company that's offering the service for other purposes. And again, transparency is very important here. Information about what happens to that information. Is it shared with anyone or not? If it is shared, for what purpose is it shared and with whom? So once again, I think transparency is very important here. It's probably not the case, however, that each of us wants to have direct and immediate control over every instance of sharing of our data. Can you imagine for just a moment all the various products and services that you use in an online environment being interrupted on a continuous basis with the question, is it okay if I send this information to that party? We would probably go crazy. And so we would need, if we want to have some kind of authorization mechanism, we probably need to establish frameworks that will allow us to express what our preferences are and have those frameworks be the drivers for what is done with information that is accumulated in the course of business or in the course of interaction. I would note that it's not just business that needs this kind of information. Almost anything you do on the internet ultimately requires some kind of information. For example, getting access to the internet, assuming it's not free, you may need to have an account. And the party that is providing you with access to the internet needs to know where to send the billing information, for example, or may need to have ways of reaching you with your email or mobile number or something in case something goes wrong, in case there's a question. So the issue here is not whether data is needed in many instances. I think the answer is yes, it is. The real question is what happens to it, and are the users adequately informed so they can make informed decisions about what to do. Now, finally, I think that we're discovering that there is information which is accumulated and used, but this is not necessarily reported. And you could see a trend in some places looking for a regulatory constraint, or at least auditing or reporting from companies. At Google, for example, we do a considerable amount of reporting about governments asking for information. For example, we provide statistical information about that. With regard to privacy, we have a privacy dashboard that lets you control and remove information that's been accumulated. So these are the kinds of things that I believe the polling or the discussion has revealed. And I wanted to make one other comment, if I might, Antoine, and it's a point about what you've accomplished. It's not just a question of getting information back from the users, which you have done, but this is an informing process. People are learning about how things work and what issues are arising, what policies need to be debated. And so the tool that you're using to get information back is also putting information out into the hands of the general public. And I think that is as valuable a contribution as getting the information back. So I'll stop there. I'm sure others will have some observations to make on this topic.
Thank you very much, Vint, and thank you for the compliment on the work. We are also really proud that we made it, also made it in this year, because it was quite a challenge also. I'd like to give the floor to Concetina. Concetina, your reaction.
Okay, thanks a lot, Antoine. I want just to give some information about the results that we have obtained in Italy, because as you know, we are partner of Mission Publique on this project, and we have played this deliberation day on the 10th of October. I was moderator of the part related to the data. So, and what we had a particular interest from citizens and from participants on this theme, on the data collection and on the way data are collected, used and shared from the social platform, and also from artificial intelligence tools, cookies, and other platforms. So what we noted, we had several comments on transparency and human rights. So there were several requests and comments asking for a more transparent process on how data are collected and used, and also on asking for respecting human rights in using data from user. So, and several participants also shared comments and thoughts on the need to have more literacy and education so that people can have more awareness about how the data are used. But this is not enough, because even if there is education, the important point is the framework and the legislation that could not be something related to local level, but should be more global. At least legislation should have should be handled at the regional level, so should go beyond the national borders. And several comments were related also to GDPR, because we are in Europe, so there was the need to asked for updating the GDPR to include the perspective of the citizen, but also to include the new issues that are brought up from artificial intelligence. And there was also a lot of discussion about data, because somebody and several participants said that maybe there could be a kind of separation between data related to the digital identity intended as a group of information that identify a person, and also this kind of data maybe could be also centralized and managed by the central agency. But the people want to point out the difference between this kind of data and the more sensitive data that are collected by platforms. This second group of data should be owned by people. They should have control and access. And somebody said that maybe they should never be collected by some platform, because there are some data that are so sensitive that should be kept in the hands of the users. And so I don't want to take too much time, but I want to use this opportunity also to mention the best practice forum on data and new technologies that I am coordinator, as Antoine specified before, that is handling the same kind of topics. So I think these results that have been collected by Mission Publique maybe could be put and shared with the best practice forum. And maybe this could be more linked also with a participation to the session of the BVF Data and New Technology that will be held next week. So that's all from my side. Thanks, Antoine, for inviting me.
Thank you, Concettina. And indeed, I think there is a synergy and there is a lot to learn from your work and to input in the discussion on data. And it was personally one of my breakthrough during the process to understand that balance between what is personal data and what is data as a society, and that indeed we all have to learn that new state, that new stage of society, working with data, handling data together and individually. So it was also for me a learning process that I had. I'd like to give you a short feedback on the questions on the Slido. So if we see the people that have joined us today, we have also quite something similar as what the citizens said, that this is equally an opportunity and a threat. And I think for me, it reflects this need to understand better and to learn on what is data and how to handle it, that we are not at the end of that discussion. Thank you very much, Vin. Thank you very much, Concettina. I'd like to go to the next session, which is on the digital public sphere. So that was the second topic we addressed during the dialogue. And why this question is because, of course, the traditional channels of information and the way citizens are making up their mind has dramatically changed in the course of the last 10 years with the emergency and surge of social media. So in a way, we may all be producer of information and receiver of information, and that has a long list of consequences on how we discuss and how we together shape our opinions, how we discuss online, but also offline. So the question for us is, what does it take to have a healthy discussion online? And what is it with one of the main challenges around that, which is disinformation? And that's the topic we wanted to address with citizens. On that specifically, I also again would like to ask you a second question is, where do you draw the line of on free expression? This is also a question we asked to the citizens. I see that some of you already started to answer. Let's look at what the citizens and participants said around the world. And what they said is that they see kind of a necessity to regulate, or at least to control, to act on freedom of speech. And the answer that comes first is that speech should be controlled so that people are not harmed. So the goal being for people to be protected. And rules should be the same in private and public spaces. That's the majority of opinion and views of the citizens. But what they don't like is that freedom of speech should be controlled completely. So it's 10% of the citizens, or that there should be no restriction at all on freedom of speech is also not the preferred option. If we now ask them about their level of exposure to disinformation and what they feel, how they feel exposed or not, how they feel the people in their country are exposed or not, and the people around the world. And what we see is that they have the feeling that they are much less exposed themselves than the people in their country, and that the people elsewhere in the world are even more concerned and exposed to disinformation. There is a relative subjective view of exposure to disinformation. Also, we asked them after the discussion, the same as for data, if they will change their behavior, if they will act differently. So Vint, when you say this is a learning process also for the participants, indeed, in that case also, almost 80% of the participants told that, yes, they would be more cautious about what they see, read, and hear online. Then that was the more individual part of the views of the citizens. We also asked them as groups, so you see people seated at table, and we asked each of those tables all over the world, or virtual table, to work on assessing different tools for fighting disinformation. We asked them to assess the role of different actors. So we asked them, what should public bodies do? What should private sector do? And what should civil society at large do? And we proposed them categories of actions to fight against disinformation, going from education and empowerment up to law and legal instruments, going through making sure that content is of high quality. So citizens had the time to work on these different tools and these different type of actors, and to assess the emergency and the usefulness of different tools. And what we have as a core result is that people saw that the #1 priority, both in terms of emergency, so it's important to act now, and it's going to have a big impact, is education. And that is true for them, for the public bodies. So public bodies, there is an emergency for them to act on education, but it's also something that is going to have impact. And the same goes for civil society, so huge support, and where they see that civil society should invest in education, but also a strong support for actors of the private sector that should also put a priority on education, both in terms of impact, because it will have an impact, and because it is urgent to do so. We, more generally, when we asked who should take the lead, who should be leading the efforts against disinformation, what we see is that there is a very high support for a multi-stakeholder process where all actors in a way are included. And the results you see above, no one is meaning that the less support is to let it go and have no efforts to fight disinformation. So we see that citizens are really approving, supporting common action by all actors to fight disinformation. But at the same time, they see that different actors should have also different priorities. Raquel, I'd like to have your view, your feedback on those results.
Thank you so much, Antoine. And first of all, I was so lucky to be around the project with you guys for over these 3 years in different capacities. But I should say that this year, being on the ground and being closer to the discussions was really, really rewarding. And I could see the impact it does with the citizens while they are asked, as Vince said, about how they feel about the internet. Some of the reflections first, before I forget, I need to thank also the local team, the wonderful Delibera Records and Isaac Brazil team, and all the facilitators that worked on the ground. I should take this moment just to give them a big clap because they did an amazing job, as well as many of the national partners. I guess here I'm also feeling for some of the information and the spice and flavors for the local results. But as Vint was saying, one of the things when asked about how Brazilians feel about the internet, they were much more hopeful helpful. Over 55 replied that they see the internet as an opportunity, more of an opportunity than a threat, followed by then equally being an opportunity and a threat. So that's a piece of information that is probably a cultural difference also, but it's the experience they are and the perception they are having. But my reflections on the digital public sphere are really, I'm going to keep on 4 quick topics. I know we're short on time. The first one was when you were showing the results at the global level regarding the exposure and how the individuals felt about themselves on being exposed to disinformation and how they perceived the others. It's interesting to see that people seem to be okay in terms of they are moderately exposed to disinformation, but then when they look for others in their country for who are the environment that is closer to their knowledge, they seem to look as it's bad, right? They are highly exposed to the impact of disinformation. But again, when asked even further, and how do you feel about other countries and how do you perceive other countries? There seems to be the effect of the neighbor's garden is greener and they might not be that exposed. And so that's very interesting to see this perception. But again, at the end, after the discussions, about 70% did reply that they were willing to change their behavior regarding disinformation. So that's an impact that should not be, apart from the interesting interpretation, that's the impact that we won in the theory of change and the change of behavior they are willing to commit to. My second, this turns to my second comment regarding the results, which is a very interesting one. So in the discussions about what is a healthy digital public sphere environment, of course, education and the legal tools came out highly in the discussions, but there is another one that came, which was access. Universal access, meaningful access, inclusion. And why is that? And the perception, I'm just going to give some of the examples from the participants that to join online, we had to do, because of the pandemic and as many others, the fully online version of this this discussion. And some of them did had to travel some hours to get to a point, to a church or to a telecenter where, to a public center where they could get connected. Some of them even had to travel through boats, and the connection was in their hometown is non-existent. So they need to take to another city, to another village to get through. And when discussing the topic of how to make the fact-checking or the critical thinking around disinformation, it's really interesting to see that if they have just a few hours to get connected, or even minutes, if they have a very short amount of time to get connected, it's a different way to deal with the data that you receive than those that are fully and 100% 24 hours connected, because then you can take the time, I can do the fact checking, I can do, because I'm connected. And those who are not, they are they have a different way to manage this data, right? And that's why access and inclusion, as an example, came up also in terms of how to build this healthy environment. The third one is also around education. And Antoine, if I'm doing the time, just
the third one, and then we can.
Okay, okay. I have two. So I'm going to talk. Education came already. You've mentioned that, right? Education is one of the high priorities for all the actors, for civil society, for the public sector, and for the private sector to use as tools to get better, to fight better disinformation. The only nuance that I think it's interesting to show in the preliminary results is that the impact changes. So while they all agree that education is the way to go in terms of priorities, they don't feel, at least in those responses, they were a bit spectacle. They were not sure that the impact on the private sector would be done. And this is not about the backlash. This is not about like companies are evil and all those things. But this is about the perception that they have in terms of influencing and the power balancing to influence the decisions and really how this fight would happen. It's a bit on the trust also. And the last one is regarding the law. And I should mention this because it's not only the legal appetite for having a law, but it's also how this law is going to turn into reality, how you are going to have the regulation around it, the follow-up processes around it. And Brazil, as you all know, we do have some forefront examples. We do have, for example, the multi-stakeholder advisory board, the CGI.br since 1995. We had the principles around the internet use since 2009. We had the Internet Bill of Rights since 2014. But right now, the reality is we are also fighting, or not fighting, but we're debating, right, in terms of what is our regulatory response also to disinformation and fake news. And this has been a very divided environment. While you do have the concerns for the society as a whole, but you also have the technical concerns behind it. And this all came up in terms of, this is not only the law, but it's about the processes that we build. And I hope sorry for taking more of the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, because you also reacted to data. I'd like to jump to Simon. Simon, your reaction.
Well, thank you very much, Antoine, and thank you very much also for giving me the opportunity to speak on this distinguished panel. I would like to obviously congratulate you personally, but also Mission Publique for conducting this online dialogue, or partly physical dialogue, citizens dialogue, the biggest one that we know about so far under these very challenging circumstances. I have to say that joining this journey with you over the last, I believe, year or so was really very exciting and very inspiring. But the reason why we as the German Foreign Office joined this endeavor, I have to say, is exactly this look at the digital public sphere and at online disinformation, because that is something that obviously we experience every day, and that we wanted to get a clearer picture about what citizens think about it and what possible solutions they would favor. And I should add that we have made a very explicit decision that we as a foreign ministry wanted to join, and not maybe another ministry within government, because we understood and still understand disinformation as a phenomenon that happens also in the international arena and can be part of a hybrid threat scenario or of foreign interference. And I believe some of the results that we have just seen speak to this understanding quite a lot. When we look at this chart where people have been asked whether they personally or maybe their country or other countries are mostly affected by disinformation, and many answered, well, it's mainly the country or another country. We understand it as a confirmation of our view that actually a lot of disinformation happens across borders, maybe with malign intent from other actors. Obviously, we also know that a lot of disinformation happens inside borders. I believe we all have a lot of examples in our minds. And this is again then sort of confirmed by the answer that people give or gave when asked what tool can best be used to tackle disinformation. And they answered this: education is actually the primary tool. And this is interesting. I maybe wouldn't have expected this answer. From a very personal point of view, I was thinking maybe this is too soft an answer to disinformation, but I see that awareness raising activities and media literacy activities can have a huge impact, and that is also why, maybe I can say this, why we are implementing such activities in third countries, and hopefully quite successfully. I also saw in the results that people see a very strong role in civil society to act against disinformation. I assume means things like fact-checking, journalism trainings, and so on. But I also saw a very strong role for regional bodies and governments. And this obviously is a call for legislation, for regulation. I would just like to very briefly mention that the EU as a regional body is actually preparing two documents in that regard. The one is the European Action Plan on Democracy, which is about to come out, I believe, on the 2nd of December. And which will contain elements of dealing with disinformation. And the other one is the so-called Digital Services Act. I believe that is sort of longer shot. The first draft will also come out towards the end of this year or the beginning of next year. So together with EU at Mission Publique, we will use the results, especially obviously from Europe, but also from across the world, in order to inform this debate at the European level and try to make sure that the results will be taken on board. So thank you again. And having seen this last figure that 80% will be more cautious about using online information gives me a lot of optimism. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Simon, and thank you for your support and what you say. I mean, it is our goal to inform the discussions. I'm happy if you see it like that. We are now going to go to the question of governance. Before that, I'd like to share with you the answers you have given to the question on freedom of speech and free. So you seem to have the kind of same priority. Yes. No, you have a bit different view that for you the context is more important, and citizens had more priority on harm and harass, and rules should being the same. So a slight difference. Okay, the numbers are not the same, of course, but it's a way to have this interaction. So now let's go to governance. One reminder, we have been running together with our partners too in June, a stakeholders dialogue. So not citizens, but stakeholders, people involved in internet governance. And we have asked them to give their feedback to assess 3 models of governance for the future of internet. This was part of the work done by Germany and the United Arab Emirates, providing information to the United Nations Secretary General on the future of digital cooperation. So it's a work that has been going since over 2 years. And one of the pieces was to ask feedback from stakeholders on how they see the future of internet governance, which kind of architecture it should have. So we run a dialogue in over 80 countries of the world online. And now I'd like to play a game with you. And the game is find the differences. So what you see on the screen is on one side, you have the titles of the recommendations of the stakeholders dialogue that we have been running in June. And on the other side, you have the titles of the options paper that has been submitted to the United Nations. And I'd like to see if you can find which one is which. So I give you 2-3 seconds. And you can bet left or right for the stakeholders dialogues report or the options paper. I'll give you the answer. On the left are the titles of the options paper, and on the right are the recommendations of the stakeholders dialogue report. What I want to say with that is we are convinced that a constructive, deliberative, informed discussion can be very valuable for a governance process at global level, and particularly for the future of internet. So that's for us one of the proof of that. And with that, I'd like to go back to the citizens dialogue and ask you the last question. The last question is, should citizens dialogues become part of the normal way of making decisions on the future of internet? You can answer that question on Slido. We can see what citizens have answered. Citizens said 87% of them said yes, it should be a normal way. But what they told us on governance is more than that. What they told is that they see a very strong support for multi-stakeholder processes. So if we ask them if following institutions, organizations should be part of the discussion and decision-making process on the future of internet, you see that an overwhelming support for a multi-stakeholder process. All actors should be on board. What you also see is that when we ask them for which kind of topics, challenges, which kind of level of decision-making should be implemented, we see that there is a strong support for a global discussion on artificial intelligence, on internet governance itself, on access. So access is for citizens a global discussion, on environment, and a bit less on disinformation and data. So we have talked about that, but for citizens, this may also be something that has to do with a more local, regional, national level. Livia, what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you very much, Antoine, and hello, everyone. It's great to be with you, at least virtually today. And first of all, let me really congratulate Antoine and actually the whole team at Mission Publique for the very important and successful initiative that you did with We, the Internet. From the Swiss government side, actually, we really have supported the initiative from the very beginning. I think that was back in 2017. Because we are convinced that the discussions on the future of digital governance can and actually must be enriched with the informed opinions of ordinary citizens from all over the world, and particularly also from the global south. It's our strong belief that decisions are better when they are taken through a sound process of participation. And I think also that capacity is an important precondition for meaningful participation, and particularly also when it comes to the rather complex and abstract issue of digital governance. And with this initiative, I think Mission Publique really made a valuable contribution in this regard. And I'm actually also very satisfied with the results of both the Global Stakeholders Dialogue in June, as well as the Global Citizens Dialogue in October, particularly with regards to the issue of digital governance. And I think, Antoine, as you just outlined, the results clearly confirm the multi-stakeholder approach towards digital governance. So the citizens that you asked, they have clearly stated that all actors, governments, international organizations, the private sector, academia, the technical community, civil society, and also ordinary citizens should be included in the decision-making process in their respective roles. And I very much agree on this, of course. And then, moreover, the results of the dialogue also say that cooperation and coordination needs to be improved. As the current digital policy landscape is actually highly complex and sometimes lacks efficiency. And I think it's interesting because this really is also very much in line with what the UN Secretary General says in his roadmap on digital cooperation, and particularly also with regards to strengthening the IGF towards an IGF+. And from the Swiss side, we fully support the intentions to involve the IGF into a more inclusive and responsive and effective instrument of global digital cooperation. I guess in a world that is becoming more and more complex, we really urgently need inclusive, participatory, agile, and also innovative models of global governance that are ready for the challenges that we are facing in the 21st century. And I'm actually convinced that deliberative citizens dialogues, as Mission Publique, as it just conducted, they can and should be part of such new forms of global governance, and particularly also with regards to the internet, which is really a global common good. And against this background, I can just say that we fully support also further establishing and institutionalizing citizens dialogues, maybe also as a permanent feature of the IGF framework. because I mean, probably we cannot conduct a worldwide citizens dialogue every year, as I think this would be quite a huge effort, as you know, Antoine. But perhaps we can start with having representative selections of citizens from different countries in all regions of the world participating in annual dialogues to express their views on the main thematic tracks of the annual IGF as well. Yeah. And I mean, this would definitely help making the IGF more inclusive. And this is also very much in the spirit of the IGF Plus. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the future developments in this regard. And from the Swiss side, of course, we stand ready to further support digital governance with and for the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Livia, and for your support. Before I give the word to Erlingua, we have officially 4 minutes on the clock. So I don't know when we are going to be cut, but we can be aware of that maybe, I don't know from the Secretariat when you cut the session, if you cut the session, but I hope not so directly. Erlingua.
Thank you, Antoine. I'll try and be as brief as possible. I just quickly want to echo what others have said, congratulating you on the dialogues and saying how pleased we are to have been supporters of it so far. The multi-stakeholder approach is at the heart of internet governance, and it's essential to realize the benefits of the internet, and those benefits are not constrained to any one particular area. So this conversation that you've organized is very important contribution to that. And looking at the takeaways, the one that jumps out for me is this emphasis on multi-stakeholderism, that one of the good isms, if I can say that. I mean, that tells us that a diverse group of stakeholders should have a voice when it comes to making decisions about the future of internet governance. I'm also noted the emphasis on a role for the research community and academia. Not being a statistician, that tells me that the citizens want informed, transparent, and evidence-based decisions about internet governance, which is exactly the approach that we would agree with. It points the way towards a collaborative approach to policymaking, where many different stakeholders can provide evidence and information that helps governments or regulators craft smart regulation and make choices about the architecture of the internet. I think it's also understandable and welcome that the outcomes tell us the role of the private sector is to be a part of those considerations, but not to lead it or solely decides the rules of the road. And that's appropriate and aligns well with our fundamental approach, supporting a consistent multi-stakeholder approach to developing the future of the internet. We've cautioned in the past that bad or misplaced regulation could hold back digital progress and the benefits of the open internet, and have argued in favor of collaborative approaches to regulation. This is why we're keen to work with governments and to engage in multi-stakeholder dialogues like here at the IGF. Taking a slightly wider view, I think it's also important to recognize that we're at a moment when the future of the global internet as we know it is far from assured. There's a rise of what some have termed a Chinese model, a net that's segregated from the rest of the internet, subject to extensive surveillance and limits on privacy. This definitely presents significant risks to the open and accessible internet that we've gotten used to and have enjoyed in the past. We see other countries, Russia and Turkey, for example, making similar moves to build digital walls around their citizens and exert data sovereignty. The traditional approaches to internet governance have been rooted in values like free expression, privacy, transparency, and the rights of individuals. And as we move forward to decide on the rules of the internet, it's really important that these values are protected. I think I'll close by saying that decisions that are made now about the future of the internet, including internet governance, will have a great impact on society and our economies for a long time. So we hope that multi-stakeholderism is at the heart of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Erlingua. Thank you for your feedback. Olga.
Thank you, Antoine, and I hope it will not be cut directly when I start speaking. So thank you very much for inviting me to be here today, but also even more for that opportunity for my organization to act as a national partner in Ukraine for the Global Citizens Dialogue. And I actually want to start with pointing our attention to the fact that we are discussing internet governance for at least the last 15 years, but we are still lacking the decision-making authority for the internet governance forums. And Maybe this is one of the reasons why internet governance is a bit losing its initial charm. And what gives me some hope, and what is indeed a good sign of the sustainability of a multi-stakeholder decision-making model, is the results which you have just a few moments ago displayed on our screens, when the citizens gave fairly equal support to all the actors in terms of their role in the internet governance decision-making. And I think this is very important when we consider how we should move forward, and this is very important even in terms of the current ongoing restructuring of IGF itself. What is even more interesting, and what surprised me and also pleased me a lot, is the finding which is saying that citizens are supporting the decision of internet governance related issues at the most global level for the majority of issues. And this is indeed very critical, because all those issues, they are not impacting only a single individual or even a single nation. They have their influence on the whole global society and on all the people around the world. That's why it is so important that whenever we are discussing these issues, we are making sure that all stakeholders are in, and that there is a platform, there is a forum where they all can come together and deliberate on these issues. But what I would like to reflect even more is the last finding, which is showing that citizens would like to be a part of the global decision making. And here I think we need to be a bit more careful and to assess carefully what can be added value of citizens' participation in decision making. For example, the results of this global survey, which was conducted with the internet framework, they could play a huge role for you, for us, for all the relevant stakeholders to actually understand whether inclusion of citizens would make a difference, and whether we could actually benefit from having citizens on board whenever we are discussing internet governance issues. But at the same time, we should, I believe we should differentiate between how we see the decision making, whether we are looking at it as a process or as an action. Because if we are talking about decision making as a process, then for sure, every citizen in the world should have an opportunity to make his voice heard. But if we are talking about decision making as a final action of this process, then it is a bit more complicated, because it does not come simply with here is the decision and you should take it and live according to it. But here comes also the responsibility of taking this decision, comes the accountability, and also the decisions are not always easy. Sometimes it's very difficult. You need to consider all the options, and you need to be aware that you might be criticized for the decision that you have taken, especially if you're talking about a decision which has a global impact and has an influence on many countries, on many people, on many nations, as it always happens in the field of internet governance. That's why I think we should acknowledge that not even everyone is ready to be a part of this process and to be a part of this decision making as an action, because at the end, when you need to consider all the options, you need to be able to think out of the box. I just would give a simple example. When you come to the supermarket and you need a bottle of milk, and you think it's easy, but you come and you see at the shelf like 10 different brands of milk, and it already makes you to pause and to think which one is better, what will be the benefits, which one I should choose. But here it's more difficult. It's not even about you or your family. It's about the whole humanity, the decisions in internet governance. That's why you should be ready to take in those decisions, and you also should be ready for the influence and the consequences of those decisions. And here, what is important, and what many citizens in Ukraine and as the findings show all over the world said, that education is important, because if you don't have the basic knowledge of the very concepts of internet governance, then you can't really be objective, or you can't really provide a relevant opinion on how you should go further with these issues. That's why I think we should ask citizens about what are their interests, and this global citizens dialogue proved that this is really a successful experiment. So we should ask them in order to make sure that we are moving in the right direction, and also that we are staying accountable before the citizens. But we at the end can't turn the whole decision-making process into the marketplace where everyone has the same equal role to play. And that would be it from my side.
Yes, thank you, Olga, for the differentiation too, and your participation and feedback. I will now show you the results of the the short question we asked. So you are even more, as a group, we are even more in favor of having citizens on board of the process. So it's a 100%. I don't know why we don't have a no or don't know. So it's thank you for that support of the work. Now I'd like to go to the last part. We are a bit over time, and I'm happy that we are still together. Our next steps, and then I will give the floor to Lynn. Next steps is a short-time step is to release the final report with all the findings and also taking into account also North-South differences, gender perspectives, age perspectives. So that's something we are going to start work on. We will also release the data set so that anyone can take a look at it and work with that data set, and a deliberation toolkit to improve and make it possible for others to run that kind of discussions if they want to. We are also focusing on impact activities. For the longer term, our goal now and our feeling, and my feeling has been reinforced by the discussion I've seen in the chat and your feedback, is that indeed we should pivot from a global dialogue to a global platform. We offer to be coordinating those global activities. We are happy to support national initiatives, and we want to engage in internet governance with the results, maybe through dynamic coalitions is one idea we have been playing with, of course, with the UN roadmap implementation, and leading to 2025 by having a more and more institutionalized role for such dialogues. I get your feedback, and I'm so happy for that support you give to us and that work. Lynn, I'd like to have your conclusion words before I thank everyone and invite you to a virtual coffee break. We will switch to another Zoom where you can join us at our virtual booth, and we can take a coffee or anything that is relevant for the time zone you are in, and discuss a bit more freely, because this one was not a profound discussion with an engagement with participants. So I'm sorry for that, but it's the time frame. We have another hour after where you can follow us on another Zoom. We will be there and have a more open discussion. For now, Lynn, I'd like to have your feedback and your closing words.
And thank you, Antoine. And let me add my thanks to those of the other panelists, to Mission Publique, the entire staff, for all the great work over the last few years, but also, of course, to all the citizens and those who participated in this process. Without that, we wouldn't have anything, frankly. And of course, to all the supporters and sponsors, without which their support, this also wouldn't have happened. So it really does take a broad set of support and participation to make these efforts successful. There's so many other comments I'd like to reflect upon from the other panelists that I just agree with strongly, but I don't want to be repetitive nor long. I think just quickly to say that never in the history of the world have we as citizens ever had the opportunity to make our voices heard. We have the tools, we have hopefully the opportunity, but that's where I think the next phase of this project comes in, as Antoine just mentioned. Moving this to a global platform, using some of the facilities we have through United Nations activities, through Internet Governance Forums activities such as the NRIs, will really be critical to building out the broad base of activity that we need. You know, these processes really can have an impact. And, you know, I first became aware of some of the work on Mission Publique back in 2015 with a climate change activity in France, where in fact, a similar process was running in parallel to the co-op process. And in fact, the citizens actually advocated for more extreme, if I can use that word, measures than what the policymakers were actually debating, you know, across the country. So, you know, that's the power of getting to individuals and getting their voices. We're the ones that have to implement these changes and live with them. We should be a fundamental part of those discussions and debates. And I say that not only in policymaking in government circles, I also say that in private sector. The private sector could do a lot more to reach out to citizens who really understand what their desires and comfort levels are. So I always try and take the opportunity to encourage them to do the same and look at their own deliberation and policy setting processes. You know, finally, and this may just be the country I'm in at the moment, I think one of the things we actually need to think about when we look at deliberative processes is really making sure that we're not just focusing on those areas of high concern, that we're actually looking out further. This is where the digital public sphere is so important. Digital commons is so important. Caring about your fellow citizens is so important. And we really need to make sure that these processes actually really encompass and fold that in as well. Otherwise, I fear that we're just going to be in a reductive, set of concerns, which personally I'm not particularly fond of, where I think that might lead. So I'd really like just to encourage Mission Publique and the platform that we actually build out to look at the positive and to look at a broader ecosystem that these efforts actually sit in as well. And then maybe just as a final comment, this wouldn't happen without the support of people on the ground, of the national partners, of governments, of sponsors. We all need to take this forward and push hard for it. And I really hope we keep the momentum going. Mission Publique is going to make their data set public, which is extremely important. Transparency has been mentioned a number of times here in the last hour. But I think people being able to delve into the data and understand what it means at as local a level and as fine an issue that they need will be critically important. It's been mentioned a couple of times with 2025 WSIS process. For us to have an impact on that process, we're going to need to have strong results by 2022, 2023, just to ensure that that's actually working out. So I say that not to put pressure at Mission Publique. I can see Antoine laughing. But I think for all of us to keep up the momentum that we've actually built here, this isn't, go away and study the results for a year or two and come back in 2023 and have something ready for 2025. That's not what we need. So we need to keep the momentum. We need to build the platform up. I really do hope that the United Nations, through the UN Secretary General's efforts and through the Roadmap on Digital Collaboration, will really embrace a lot of these learnings, I guess, or findings from this process. Not just the findings from the process, but the findings from managing a process like this as well. There's still, in some places, fear with respect to or a reluctance or reticence to reach out and engage citizens. And I think we need to make it clear that, these are thoughtful processes. People need to be heard, and really we all should be leaning into them. So I want to thank Antoine again and the entire Mission Publique staff for this activity, and of course the open forum and all their participation in the IGF processes as well. It's incredibly important and really at the heart of what the IGF is about. So thank you.
Thank you everyone, Lynn, and thank you for your support. Also, yes, I also wanted to, so what you say, I agree to what you say. I see that Jason from the UNSG team is here. So Jason, this is a word for you. Let's touch down later on that. And I think it's very important to be in that process. And as you say, Lynn, not to be too late in the process. So that's in our mind, and we aim at that. Thank you, yes, again, for all our national partners, the incredible efforts you've been doing in a difficult situation. You have been navigating the outbreak and the situation on the ground. So that's and you made it. So thank you to all of you, because this is the key part of it. And I know that many of you I see are participating today. So that's a place to really thank you. And of course, thank you to our national strategic partners, because this is also the core of our support and long discussion, very productive discussion in the past years. So thank you. To invite you to the next hour. The next hour will be in our virtual booth. This is where we are going to try new formats of IGF, virtual IGF. You have the link. Normally, Benoit will share that in the chat. You also have the link normally on the web page on the chat in YouTube. And if you don't see it, you can send us a mail or a message, and we can direct you to links that we can have a more informal moment of discussion on the results and have something maybe to drink, depending on the time. I'd like to thank you very much, all of you, for your participation, for having given your reaction as a panelist very shortly, and so it was very fruitful, and thank you very much. And I'm of course a bit frustrated that we don't have 3 hours to discuss the results, but that's part of the exercise. Thank you, and see you soon for the next steps of that process, and also maybe another session of IGF. We will surely cross one another, and Conchetina will come back to you for being with you in the best practice forum. Thank you. The link,
Thanks,
yes, you have the link. Thank you, everyone. Yes, and see you soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Merci.
Bye. Merci. Yeah, bravo. Bravo, everyone. Thank you.
Well done, Antonio.
Yes.
Said well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you for you being there, for the support. It's very important. You are the core infrastructure of the IGF. So thank you. And flexibility, because we were also preparing last minute changes. So thank you for that. And
welcome.
And have a good, where are you based?
I'm in Nigeria.
Nigeria. So have a nice afternoon in Nigeria. And
yes,
soon. We still don't have a partner process in Nigeria, but we have a partner. So maybe it would be interesting.
Okay, so I look forward. I'm interested. I look forward to that.
Very good. So thank you.
Yeah, we still have attendees in the attendee room making some contribution. We still have 2 minutes more just to quickly, probably send them a link on how to, participate in what you have just stated right now. How to be a member, how to play an active role. You could send a link inside there so that they would have it before our 2 minutes is up. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I think we can also stop the live streaming.
Okay.